is an important resource in Santa Maria, and it's also a hot topic. We sat down today. California's in a drought.
Yes.
And water is a hot topic, and everybody's worried about where they're going to get it. So how does Santa Maria get their water?
Well, the city of Santa Maria primarily has two sources of water. We have a very large groundwater basin that underlies the entire valley. And then the city of Santa Maria is also a participant in the state water project, meaning that we get imported state water.
And where does that water come from?
Well, the state water project water comes from basically the Sierras, snow melt, and then it goes into large reservoirs in Northern California. And as you heard, this winter, Northern California got quite a bit of rain, and some of those reservoirs were even in flood stage. So that water is stored there. It then runs down through the delta, where it is pumped out and then put in canals. So those run through Central California, primarily along Interstate 5 corridor, and then it pumps over to our area, and we utilize it here.
Where do we store it here?
We do not have a storage reservoir for state water. We're connected to the Central Coast Water Authority. It is made up of the water purveyors in Santa Barbara County that decided to participate in the state water project. So we have a turnout for state water, where it then connects to our system at the blending station, where we can blend it with groundwater, add some additional chlorination if we need to, and then the city has storage reservoirs for the combined flows. So we have large reservoirs that accommodate both fire flow and peak demand.
For a long time, we, the city of Santa Maria, have been under some strict guidelines about water conservation from the governor's office, but they just changed recently, correct?
Right. So the state was interested in a statewide 25% reduction. Based on the existing use within the community, they prorated that. Our target was 16% for the last year.
And how do we do?
We achieved our 16% goal for the year that was in place.
Cool.
So it really speaks well of the community.
Right.
The city itself did a great job with the businesses and residences. As a municipal water provider, we did not immediately tell people they had to reduce their water use by 16%. Recognizing that the city itself was one of the largest customers, we took a lot of that burden on ourselves. We worked with the Recreation and Parks Department and how we could adjust watering in parks, maybe locations where we could take out significant water use that weren't heavily used. You know, we still want to continue to have turf and well-maintained fields on soccer fields and baseball fields and that sort of thing. But there are some areas where maybe it could be removed and some attractive, more drought-tolerant landscaping could have been put in place.
Right.
So the only restrictions we imposed on the public were the ones that were mandated by the state. And those are pretty standard with respect to the restaurants not offering water right away. You have to ask for it. Hotels providing the option for people not to launder the sheets. Don't hose off the sidewalk. We limited water during certain times of the day.
Right.
But those were the only restrictions we put on. And I think people really recognize that being in fourth or fifth year of a drought, and it just became kind of commonplace. Turn off the water when you're washing your hands or while you're waiting to brush your teeth or that sort of thing.
Right.
We were able to achieve that conservation requirement without restricting days of the week for watering or telling people, hey, use less than you used in 2013.
Right. So now those kind of restrictions or
The
conservation goals have changed now, right? The governor has changed his how he manages that.
So the recognizing that it was continuing and the uniqueness of the rain event with the El Nino, where there were significant areas of rain in Northern California, not Southern California, it appears that the state recognized that the one-size-fits-all conservation requirement didn't really apply. Certainly requiring, somebody living next to a reservoir that's in flood stage to conserve 25% may or may not have made direct connection anymore.
Sure.
So each water purveyor was allowed to work their way into what would be an appropriate conservation standard based on the supply available.
So, talking about supply, our supply of state water has increased recently?
Sure. So, the city of Santa Maria has an entitlement to state water, about 17,000 acre feet per year of what they call Table A water. Each year, based on the amount of rainfall and the water available, they come up with an allocation. The allocation this year is 60%. So, we will be able to import plus or minus 10,000 acre feet of state water.
What's an acre foot? Describe that.
You probably don't want the standard answer of it's an acre of area, 1 foot deep.
Maybe.
Basically,
And how many
that's
gallons is in that?
Well, to put it in perspective, the city of Santa Maria, to serve the residents and businesses of the city, typically on average, we produce somewhere around 13,000 acre feet a year to serve the 100 and some thousand residents here and then also the businesses. So to be able to import 10,000 acre feet of state water means that we're only going to be producing 3,000 acre feet out of the groundwater basin. So that is great for the groundwater basin. As we know, we're still in a drought here and the opportunity for recharge is less. So it's a benefit to everyone who utilizes the basin.
Right. So recently, once your department put out statements about, since we're getting that state water, you are asking residents who use water softener systems to not use them anymore? Or
well, because we blend state water with groundwater, and depending on what the state water allocation is and the amount of state water that we can or we're able to import, that blend changes throughout the year. Certainly the state water project shuts down during certain times of the year to do routine maintenance on pipes or channels or that sort of thing. So at that time, we use only groundwater. The groundwater in the Santa Maria Basin, while plentiful, does have hardness to it. So primarily what we want to do is educate the public to let them know that based on our state water allocation, and those winter rains came very late this year. So it was late in the spring when they determined that the allocation went up to 60%. So in order for us to utilize that full 10,000 acre feet, we have to run almost totally state water for the rest of this calendar year. Well, if people are used to, let's say, hard water from the groundwater during the winter, they may not have been aware that the water is coming naturally softer out of the tap. So it's just an opportunity to educate the residences and businesses about maybe adjusting the water softener so it doesn't recharge as often, or maybe turn off the water softener if the water is of a softness that is comfortable or meets what their expectations would be.
right. Doesn't water softeners have a negative impact to the water recycling system that we use?
Well, there's several reasons. We wanted to make sure the people were aware that they could either reduce their softener use or shut it off.
Right.
One is that it would save those people money. They wouldn't have to go out, and primarily I'm talking about like the recharge softeners where people go out and buy the bags of salt.
Salt-based systems?
Yeah. So it would save them money by maybe not needing as much salt or not needing it for the rest of this calendar year. Secondly, each time that brine system recharges the ion exchange for the softener, that water is then discharged into the wastewater system. So it actually utilizes more water. So it's a way to save money and also conserve water by not running the water softener so hard or not at all. And then thirdly, you mentioned that it's also better for the environment. That's a minor part of what we're talking about. We just mostly wanted to inform the public. But clearly, as you see bags of salt leaving large stores, whether it's a hardware store or whatever, that is salt that's being introduced into the basin. We are in a closed system here, so it goes into our wastewater stream. It's discharged at the wastewater plant, which then perks into the groundwater basin. So primarily it's just an opportunity to educate the public about how those things work. I think the general public is starting to get a deeper understanding, certainly of water usage and also the water cycle in the valley. And I think that's been a positive point of the drought. Just people are more aware.
Right. Looking toward the future, how is Santa Maria going to fare with water? Other communities are talking about desalination plants and maybe spending more money on water and fighting for those allocations. So how are we going to fare in the future, you think?
Well, we just completed the urban water management plan. We are required to update by the state to do that. One great benefit that Santa Maria has that many communities throughout the state don't have, as I mentioned, is this very large groundwater basin. So it functions as kind of a reserve for us if state water allocations are low or that sort of thing. Based on our state water allocation, as I mentioned, the city is entitled to about 17,000 acre feet, with right now our current annual demand around 13,000 acre feet. So even in a year with 60 or 70% allocation, we can still almost run all state water. So the previous utilities directors and city councils really put the city on a good path as far as diversifying its water supply. when you think about the Santa Maria Valley here, the public water purveyors, whether the city of Santa Maria, Golden State Water, or Guadalupe, are actually importing that state water, bringing more water into the basin than is naturally here and just pumping it out. So it does help diversify that. We certainly evaluate other options that may become available periodically. You know, desalinization is certainly something that's in the news now. Santa Maria isn't directly adjacent to the ocean.
Right.
We think for the city to pursue that individually would be very expensive, but we're certainly been having conversations, been part of the conversation with Santa Barbara County. They've been looking at other water supplies, San Luis Obispo County as well. So if those opportunities become available, we would certainly evaluate them to see if they make both environmental and economic sense for the community.
For more information about city government, check out santamariatimes.com or follow me on Twitter.